Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Plus Three Futures and Commodities Show. This is the holiday edition. My name is Ben Maldonado, and as always, my partner Barry Hederachi's here with me. How we doing, Barry, on December 22nd?
Doing great, doing great. Looking forward to the time off. It's
Yeah, next
been a
week.
busy couple of months, man. Last couple of
Yeah.
months.
I
So,
don't, and I don't think next week's going to be boring. I really don't.
yeah.
But it'd be nice to just slow down, spend time with the family.
Hmm.
We're going to do a little different show today. It's going to be an abbreviated version, a holiday version. We're essentially just going to cover the big five with Barry and talk about the major markets, and that's the ES, which is the S&P E-mini futures. We're going to talk about bonds. We're going to talk about the dollar. We're going to talk about the euro, crude, gold, and copper. And then Barry will throw it back to me, and I'll just quickly go over the NQs and Bitcoin, and then we'll kind of just riff on what we see going on here and into next year. So, without any further ado, Barry, let's jump into ES here.
Let's take a look at the ES. We left off with this chart last week, and the basic idea was that we want to hold above the square of 72 and hopefully reach the 90. And this is where we talked about that, at least having a 100-point break if after we get through this. And that came in spades. And this is what we talk about when we say break above and hold above. You can see how this, we made the high and pulled back, one day, but we held well above, actually it's right above the zone.
It's right on top of your zone. That's what I was seeing. Yeah.
And so if you go by the square, we can say how, it pulled back, but it gave a lot of air above the square. And so that's positive, right? That's how we normally look at that. So if we put the square of 90 on here, which is, after 72, 90 would be the appropriate one to look at. We have, we're approaching this really cool square, which is, 90 by 45. And we're climbing this, the 2 by 1, 1 by 2 in a really amazing way.
Yeah. Heading right for that half square
We're
and timing.
really holding it well. I mean, if you look at that. Perfect.
Right.
And do you want to know when that's going to be? That's going to be on December 29th.
There you go.
So up until then, we'll see. We'll see what the price action is getting close to that. So it could be a day before, a couple of days after. But our next focus is really here because you don't get runs like this every day. And when we do get them, you definitely want to monitor it. If you guys remember, we were looking for that 36 by 36 earlier as we were crossing that line. And now we're approaching this 90 by 90. And so, we want to know how, what's going to happen. And that's what we're watching for. And up until then, it's possible, we can hit some air pockets like we did the other day. It's also possible that we continue to run. And that's why we want to, give it space and watch the levels and make sure that we're not, trying to jump the gun. Right.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about it last week that 90 was at 48.42 and wouldn't be surprised if they end up going for that.
Yeah, and I think the 2 by 1 is the one that we really want to watch because that's breaking of that would be the end of the sort of the blow off move that we're getting. And this really looks like a blow off because they do come in, they do normally, hold right above 2 by 1, so let's see how that
and when
works
you say
out.
2 by 1, Barry, explain that to people so they understand. It's two points or two moves in price for every one move in time, right?
That's right. So if you look at these, well, I can let's look at this square. The dashed line would be the 50% in price, the horizontal one. The vertical one is 50% in time. So this is the square of 90. So 90 up, 90 degrees up, we convert price to degrees. That way we get the 90. And here's 90 in time, 90 bars. So if we were to draw a diagonal, that would be, that's a 1 by 1.
Meaning 1 point in price for every point in time or day in time.
Right. And the fact that we meet at the corner of the square from one corner to the other corner, the diagonal, and it's equal. And it's 90 in price and 98 in time. So that gives you the 1 by 1. And of
Right.
course, you can scale it down 1 by 1 here, 1 by 1 here. All along the line is 1 by 1, whatever the ratio happens to be.
Correct.
And anytime above the above markets above the 1 by 1, I mean, the theory is, it's in a very strong position, right?
It's bullish. Yep.
Very, I mean, really bullish, very strong. And when it's above a 2 by 1, I mean, it's extremely bullish,
Which is why you were saying blow off wise.
Exactly.
Yep.
And this is, it's a pattern, and this is what happened. So we weren't calling for a blow off over here or here, Now it's really taking shape. So we're not late, we're ahead of time. We're looking at it, obviously the date is at the end of the month. So we'll look for what happens around that, keep an eye out. And the breaking of this line is really what we want to remember. When the high came in, we were watching a couple of lines and say, hey, I forgot where that was, but this can't be sustained. And you really want to see what kind of timing is at the end when we break. If we break up here, it would have a whole different meaning than if we broke here, where we have exactly
90
price. Yeah, with price and time. And if it's a blow off, we're going to go probably a little bit above, all the way up to, I mean, why not hit 49 and be done with it? It's a nice square root number too. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what we're watching. Up until then, there's no pressure. We're just trading in the right direction. Of course, when we get up close to that level, things can get a little bit wonky. And so you want to watch your position. You want to watch the downdrafts and the air pockets and all of that. And volatility can usually increase going into it. So, and you can see how we, last 3 days, volatility did increase. And, hopefully we go blowing right up into it. So we'll see how we close today. And are we going to go with like a sort of a murmur, or are we going to go with a big hurrah? That's kind of what it looks like. But till we get past that, I mean, that's really the focus, because there's no really another reason to look at anything else. All right.
Good.
That's simple. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that. So 48.51 level is sort of resistance for us. That's what we're watching. Anything below that, I think we can look at this level around 47.30, 47.40 area is really like the bottom end. Well, we can look at
yesterday's low.
Yeah. Wednesday's low. It's reasonable to look at that. So that would be, 47.43, but we can look at, 47.44, that area to be support. And if we start obviously to get there means we break the 2 by 1. So there's your signal, and it's at that point we'll start to look at the counter trends and how things develop. I mean, even with this high, surely sometimes the markets can, hit a little early, and there's something else happening here, which is, we have 49 degrees of sun's movement right into here. And, we're close to, 49 here, 45 there. So we're in the pocket. It's just the pocket to really watch it. And
if you look at your high to high, you got 722 coming up at the 90.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly, at the 45. So there's a lot of things lining up, and there's some other things lining up here. I haven't updated all the squares, but time counts. So that's it for that. Let's take a look at the weekly. And the weekly also
up against it.
Up against it, where, the square of 81 is the one we were watching, because square 81 caught the low. And it was also, 40 some days, weeks in time. So that was a perfect square out. Now we're doing it up, moving the other way. And we also had the same sort of timing, half a square going into the high, pull back exactly to 50%.
To the half square.
So everything's very mechanical on this, on the weekly. It looks, it looks good, even though it's a E-mini, we have adjustments, we have new contracts rolling in. It's a rollover contract, it's rolling over, not like the cash index. I also do work on the cash because we don't have the rollover effects, but the levels work out, as you see. Anyway, based on weekly, so 81, 81 square of 81 is really in place, and we really need to hold above basis the weekly. If we can hold above 48.10 or so, really that's when we'll have to look at how much further it can go.
Right.
But speaking of 2 by 1s, if you take a look at, let me just draw one up here. Just roughly draw it like that. And you can see on the weekly how steep
the
climb is, So it's more like a 4 by 1, right?
Yeah.
A look at
That's
that.
right.
And
Not sustainable.
yeah, that's definitely going for a good close.
Right.
So there's your 4x1. And actually, let's put that up there. That makes sense. And that's really the line to watch. This is the one to
Hmm.
watch. And when that breaks at some point, so we have a little bit of a couple, 2, 3 weeks to see which way we're going to push.
Hmm.
Up until then, we patiently, we go with what we have. Here's the 30-minute. We've been watching the 30-minute for a while.
Hmm.
And just to review from where we're having a low here, that was October low. And here we are. We're right here. Now let's zoom in. So we've been basically stuck here. That 48.18, this block up here was where we had resistance, and we got right into that pocket.
Hmm.
Here's Ben, you always look at these, when a line breaks and it comes back to kiss it
There
goodbye
it
and
is.
drop,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Look at that.
And that was classic textbook. We went up, crawled up the line, broke it, came back to kiss it, and then boom.
Hmm.
And it's funny, held exactly at 47,
Right at support.
44, which was a square coming off that
Hmm.
low. This is 30
Hmm.
minutes. And you can see, if you take that as one square, that block, we basically found support right here overnight. And but when that happens, by the time you walk into the morning, it's going to be, we already tested that out, had the one
Hmm.
washout, and then boom, now we're back up to the 48.18
Resistance. Yep.
resistance exactly, and pretty much, let's just say when that same block is in play,
Hmm.
like that. Let's just say like that. And my morning thing was, if we can hold about 48.18, then we can probably, actually rip. But we need to
Right.
settle above that,
Yeah.
and we haven't done that. We're unable to. There's selling coming in, and above means like here. If I put a horizontal line there, you see these two bars, right? Last two
Hmm.
bars. You see how it's holding above, like say 48.14.
Yep.
So we want it to do that above 48.18, right? We're
You're
not
right.
doing that. So let's see
Because
what
right
happens.
now, on a shorter term basis, we got a lower high.
Yeah, and on a 4 hour basis, I mean, just pretend this is a 4 hour. I mean, we're
Yeah.
basically here's a high and here's a lower high.
Yep.
And that's why it's really important to watch on a shorter term. Not everybody trades a 30-minute. So
Right. Right.
shorter term, this is really the key. This is the number we're watching to see if we can sustain that or not. And for me, like the red line is 47.90. If we
Hmm.
can't maintain, that's pretty tight range, as far as
Yeah. It's nice.
so if we break that, that could indicate that the high is in place. So, we're kind of playing it. We have to play it carefully because we don't want to go too early. We don't want to go too late, but we want to
Right.
be in the mix, calling it out, being able to catch it as early as possible, let's say. Um, so that's what we're watching. Anything you want to add to that?
No,
Or
no. I think that's a good synopsis. Is that I'm just watching to see if we do get a lower high, or if we make a higher high, it's just
yeah, the thing is getting past
cranking
this
it up.
45-day period,
Yeah.
whatever happens here, whatever shenanigans that happens here, we want to see how it comes to here,
Hmm.
knowing it could finish up maybe a day early, a day late, a couple of days here and there, but we know the zone is there. So that's
And
why
and if
we're watching carefully. Yeah,
yeah, and if you throw it into the mix, yesterday we had the winter solstice,
exactly. So
which
close
is a
enough, close enough.
very important natural cycle. Yeah.
That's why this high could be one, and we have the
Yes.
lower high happening here. So the idea
Yes.
is, this is when, all hands are on deck, right?
You got to watch it.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is not sleepy time. So,
No.
all right, I think we covered that well. Let's move on to bonds. Bonds are very close to 72, which is we talked about last week,
Hmm.
and even before, like 72 is sort of a good harmonic for bonds. It's really penetrated. This is lower part, and 124 was the upper target for us. 119 was the first, ideal place. Of course, we pushed
Push
past that.
through. Yep.
And now it's really 124. And if we're going to think it's going to go higher, it's really going to have to settle, not just settle above 124, it's going to have to settle above like 125,
Yeah.
and see what happens. And of course, if that happens, then we get to the upper boundary of this consolidation, which happens to be 134. Let's see. Let's see. But the
I mean, if you
downtrend is
just look at the bars, Barry, look how congested it's getting as opposed to, the sort of strong move up we were in before.
exactly.
We're
Yeah.
flattening out a little bit.
Mhm. Well, we're getting close to the 72, and we
Yeah.
got 124, a lot of resistance and all these
Yep.
overhead. So
Yep.
yeah, it is starting to kind of whimper out, and so let's see what happens. But you had to give it the room to finish up,
Sure.
what it's doing.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if the market, if we also have some kind of a timing element coming up in here, because we
Oh,
are
yes,
40.
we do.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and you mentioned, so yeah, we're right at 45 days here.
Hmm.
And um and it's squaring because
That's a
it's
nice square out. Yep.
yeah, because we're 3/4 of the square, which is just happens to be 124, and that's
Hmm.
not why it's there, but it just happens to be.
Right.
So again, the S&P, plus or minus a few days, and here we're right there. So a lot of
Yep.
things are lining up, I would say. And
Hmm.
in price, we're at 72. We're squaring over there. So yeah, looks like if we're going to go higher, we really have to hold about this 124 and establish, 125, 124. We got to get above that. Other than that, I would say this might be done because
Right.
we did have a very steep climb and we broke the 2x1, now, but we're still above the 1x1. So that's fine for trending, but we're looking at the timing element of this 45 coming in. And, now we know.
Yep.
Let's watch it and see what happens. Moving on to the weekly bonds. This is that box. We looked on the daily, but here's a weekly version of it. And well, we're pushing right up into that resistance. Broke the trend line. So this is typical kind of, I think, overdone kind of a move. We really, really push a lot of enthusiasm. Let's see what happens after we get past this 45 days, and if we can not get above 125, I think then this might be it.
Yeah,
Because
that
looking
box
at
is just really well placed,
the
really
box,
well. Yeah, really well done.
yeah, and yeah, I just can't. I didn't know the strength that was left in it, but now we know it's really pushed this much into the range.
Hmm.
That's about the max, and we saw on the daily, we had this square 72, just a couple of clicks above. So around 125 is really heavy. And so it's hovering around 124, which is our level. So we'll
Hmm.
let it go. Let's wait and see how it plays out. So we're watching that timing element there.
Okay.
Okay, let's move on to crude, which finally is giving some signs of life.
Look where it's settling above.
Exactly. And that's comfortably settling above,
Yeah, it's holding that level
It's
nicely. I mean,
holding pretty
Cup
well.
tried a few times and then they bought it right back up.
So we want to see it get established and slowly start to make higher lows. So we'll see what
Hmm.
that happens. This is sort of an early indication that we're managing to sort of sink the fingernails into it and
Hmm.
and hold
And hold
above.
on.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And we did have a square of 60 or something coming up, but it might or might not go there. That was just a possibility. Not the
Hmm.
72, but this square 60 I like because sometimes crude can square on this 60s and 120s beautifully.
Look at
So
that.
so that was a possibility, but we didn't quite go there.
Hmm.
Went a little early, but I think so. That was a 54. Then hold on, let me
Maybe a
see.
52. Yeah, I was thinking.
Well, yeah, because it would be square 72. We go for the quarters. Let's see. That's the
Yeah.
square I'm talking about. 54
Yep.
by
The
54,
54. Yep.
right? Three quarters, three quarters.
Yep.
So it did technically square out, and we
Yeah.
did hit the upper the midline, of the
Hmm.
band, the down band channel,
Hmm.
and that alone, that square is good enough because we know it bounced, and now we're hitting, the 73. Yeah, so if we can hold above that, I think lows might be in. I'm looking mainly at this square here.
Yeah, that 54 by 54 we did talk about last week. It does look like it's holding,
Hmm.
like it turned it.
Yeah. So let's see. As long as we're above 73, I think it's on firm ground and it could run.
Hmm.
And yeah, and the fact that we didn't get,
To the lower
it tap,
target.
it means there's enough buying pressure there, and it's
Yeah.
it's stronger than it would normally be,
Hmm.
and so there's that. Let's look at the weekly. Well, there you go. We're starting to get above the 50% of the square.
Mm-hmm. Battling at that number.
And there's our weekly big support band. We didn't quite get there. Good buying came in last week. This week followed through. I think it's squared out at the 54 by 54. So,
I do too. Yep.
you know, and so that looks good. Let's leave it at that. We'll
Mm-hmm.
continue to watch.
It's bullish.
Yeah, it's bullish, especially if you're holding above that. So
Mm-hmm.
square looks good. Gold, of course, we're back on up,
Yeah.
We're looking for um, to see what happened after we pulled back into the 50% of the square, which
That
is
wasn't too bad, was it? Because it almost hit the timing perfectly too with half
yeah,
square.
yeah, yeah. No, that was good. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this kind of little bit of overrun is healthy. That's okay. And you can see what happened from that.
Yeah.
Now, we're kind of like what we're doing with the market, are we going to go for a lower
Right. Is it a
high?
lower high or is it going to push to a new high?
Yeah, yeah. So let's take a look at, I mean, so far we're above the 50% square. Hey, it's bullish, okay?
It's
Because
bullish.
we
Yeah.
finished up the thing and this could be a
Mm-hmm.
complex two. That looks like a beginning of a three. We got gapped up. So we got one, two, plenty of ways
Yeah.
to go.
Yeah.
I think the bullish side is fine on that. And I think the weekly is the one that's really sort of revealing. And that's because all of this talk is coming at these highs.
Right.
So if we went to some kind of a climatic kind of an end, we wouldn't be doing these kinds of pullbacks
No.
on a weekly basis. We'd really be selling off, and we haven't.
2000 would have given way and it didn't.
That's right, exactly. We talked about
Mm-hmm.
2000,
Mm-hmm.
and not just the whole 2000, but it's really, really a lot of buying coming in. Of
Yeah.
course,
Yeah.
gold, $100 is no little deal. So And so let's watch it. And the other thing is it's pushing about the 50%, which we've had a hard time holding above. Guess what we're doing this week? For the first time, we're open and closing above
Wow.
50% of the square, right?
Mm-hmm.
See that? So that's the first time. And
Yep.
so that's a big deal. And
Big deal.
happening quietly as a mouse.
Yeah. Not a lot of fanfare with gold right
No, not
now.
at all. So so this is bullish. 2000 held. We're starting to move. And when we get to the dollar, we'll see what's happening there. But in the meantime, above the 50% weekly, we're doing good. Above 2000, we're doing great. So gold is holding its own, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
right? And because 2000 here was really the 50% line, right? Right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
2003. So we're good. Moving on to copper,
That
holding
copper
its
looks
own.
good too.
Speaking of holding its own, we're holding really firmly.
Look at those tests of that midline there, the center line, your half
Mhm.
square.
Yeah, yeah. Look at that.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is what we talk about.
This is
Get
the
above,
example.
hold above.
Stretch it out so it's a little bigger so they can see it because that's a perfect example of what we talk about.
So here we go.
Yep.
Here's the 50%. It's clear. It's clear. We came down, up, higher, low, broke up, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 days of tapping right above it. So that's positive.
That's clearing the square, right?
Yep.
You're getting, in
That
this
is
case,
cleared.
the half square, right? You get
Yep.
above it, and then on the pullbacks, you stay on top of it.
And now we have air above it. There's a gap,
Mhm.
and it's okay. It's looking okay.
It's grinding.
Yeah, it's grinding. We have a good trend line. We can redo another trend line here if you want to watch the short term. There we go. And there's a lot of space between the trend line and that, and 50%. So copper looks okay. Nothing to, it's doing its thing. And we've been looking at it, bullishly ever since we got this false break here.
That's exactly
And
right.
if you do that, we got one wave, two wave. Here's a third wave coming up.
Yeah.
All right, let's watch that. And it's doing okay. It's stable. And here's our weekly. We drew up this little ABCD as a potential target just to see what happens. And we're almost there.
Yeah.
Take out these highs, we're going to end up right there.
And you're fully in the channel now, back in the fork.
Back in the channel. It has, momentum's going to stop picking up. And I noticed the Hang Seng is also sort of, it's not crashing. So, and copper's holding up well. So everything, all in all, copper looks okay. We could have sold off. We didn't.
Yeah, I mean, think about that, Barry. When the Hang Seng was crashing, copper was making higher lows.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. Those are all little hints, right?
Right.
And
Yep.
and you notice how crude also is picking up.
Yep.
So everything's sort of, it's kind of early, showing the early hand.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on to the dollar. Dollar's the one that's kind of a little on weak legs, shaky legs.
It
So,
does look shaky.
uh-huh. But it's back down to visit. We came down to here first, held the half nicely, went back up to the 1/3 of the square, came back. Now I mean, 2/3 of the square. Now we're at 1/3.
Right.
And if we draw this box out, you
There
know,
you go.
here we are in the box. What's beautiful here is this box was here before this high came in,
Yeah, it was.
and it's really cool when everything lines up and, it comes back in the same area and we can look at it from different angles.
Mm-hmm.
So dollar, this really is a line we want to watch. 101 is really the level that I remember talking about. So we want to hold about 101. And I think it's okay. This looks like another sort of a pullback into the range. Let it finish up. We'll see how it goes. It's bullish long term. I don't think that was the high, all
Right.
time high. I don't think this is the all time high. And it looks like it's a big correctional phase and potentially fake out phase.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look at the 90, where that box just happens to be right there in the
Wow, look at
middle of that
that.
box. So it's
Mm-hmm.
an important level, as you can see, that 101 level. We really want to kind of hold above that.
Mm-hmm.
So we're waiting for that. We'll watch that going forward. And looking at the weekly dollar again, my ABCD was a little premature, you know, and we're back into the trend line. So we really got to
Mm-hmm.
watch this. If we kind of break up in here, yeah, it's still good all the way down to, 101, let's say.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't have the upside momentum now, right? So now it's more of a controlled consolidation, let's say, just more of a
Yeah.
consolidation. So let's see. We got to 107, really got smashed from there. And so the fact that we took out, that 104 level, it all just shows it's weaker. So let it finish the consolidation and see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Long term above, 101 is really the key to watch now. Let's see what happens next week. Anything you want to add to the dollar or anything we're seeing?
No, I think you've framed it very well.
Okay,
We're at support. Let's see if it holds.
exactly. And get to the euro. Euro is a little bit more revealing. You can see, like, I'm totally confused with the euro. I think it's going every which way.
Yeah. You
Uh,
got to be open to possibilities,
you
right?
got that right. So let's see what happens here. I really don't think that's in the play, but who knows,
Right.
and that would get us to about 90, I think. So um, anything's possible, but I just can't see euro doing that unless we're all
Mm-hmm.
drinking some kind of Kool-Aid. Um, but which happens, that's what
It does. It
delusional
does.
trading
Yep.
comes from.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, that's what we're looking at. Okay. 108 was our level. We always talked about 108. Euro is in a stronger position, and it is now. So let it be. What's the upside from here? Well, upside looking like 111 or so, which doesn't mean the euro is anywhere in a really positive zone. We've been basically in this zone for the last year at least, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now we're reaching towards the upper boundary of that, and we'll have to see how that works out. In the meantime, we can look at the weekly, which I think weekly is more revealing. It's a little bit more quieter. You don't have all that noise.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at the weekly, I talked about, when we were down here, I said, hey, as long as we're below this 108, we're okay. Once we get above it, it has more strength, which
Mm-hmm.
is clearly what happened.
Yeah. They even tried to push through it.
And we snapped back and
Mm-hmm.
last week. So this week we made a higher high. Okay, fine. And I think I said, we did this reverse ABCD, sort of look at the balancing legs, which currencies, they like to do. So
Mm-hmm.
110, 111 looks like where the next, the main resistance is big blue line is there for reason. So let's see. So yeah, we have more room to run, but that would be the next resistance level. And the ultimate would be up in here by 90, which if you look at this line, the 108, and you add, well, if you look at the 50% line, see that 45
Mm-hmm.
and the 90, and you divide that in half, that's kind of where you get the 108, right? You see that? The
Mm-hmm.
blue line here and the dotted dash line here. That's kind of how I'm working this. So getting about 110, 111 would mean we're going to finish up the square, go up to 90. Up until then, this geometry here with the resistance at 109 could turn it down, which is just about enough run. If we, when we looked at the dollar reversing, dollar had a little bit more room to run down. So euro has a little bit more room to run up. Fair
Mm-hmm.
enough. We can leave it at that and see what happens. That's all I have for that. Let's take a quick look at natural gas for our natural gas fans. It's really comes down to our, the square, the 120
Yeah.
way down, let's say 250, 252. And we talked about how that being sort of a mean reversion level, and here we are,
It's battling. Yep.
right in smack in the middle of it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take the look at the low that came in, where, it didn't make new lows, but it's holding right there. Doesn't matter at this point. The level we're watching is 250. We want to get above that to sort of reel up the upside momentum. Up
Mm-hmm.
until then, this is not much, you're just kind of letting it bottom out.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good place to short, not for me, but maybe for other people.
Right.
But you can see how shorting this area really hasn't worked either. Sorry,
No.
nailed it here. So yeah, we're kind of watching and waiting. We're waiting to see what happens at 250. We haven't quite gotten stuck under it, and we haven't quite made above it. So we have to.
The battle is still going.
Oh, what I wanted to talk about was the Dow. Well, anyway, here's the Hang Seng, it's not
Mm-hmm.
quite this way or that way, just a big consolidation. But I wanted to look at the Dow,
Ooh,
and yeah, so
144.
mhm. And this is the thing, if we're gonna break out and go to all kinds of new highs, Dow really has to settle above this square. There's no
Mm-hmm.
two ways about that. That's just how it is, and that's, let's just say 3,800. If we can hold about
38,000. Yep.
38,000, if we can hold about
Mm-hmm.
38,000, then I think we have to, clear the slates and be ready to
Mm-hmm.
take the next leg. But long as we're here, 144, we're about to square out here again, and you can see the sort of the blow offy kind of a move that we're doing. So in one hand, I'm like, well, it looks like we could time out here. We might be done
Mm-hmm.
for a bit, meaning the upside, right? So you want to really be careful in here if you're long from down these areas. Now here is definitely a flashing yellow light.
Mm-hmm.
And once we break the trend line, that's becomes sort of a flashing red light. Yeah. And for now, we're crawling right up into a square, and 144s in Dow are really, really important to watch. So so obviously I have to talk about it. So that's what I want to
Mm-hmm.
point out. And that's really, really important. And we have timing, we have everything. And we have this geometry in here that got us up into this place. And there are a lot of other things too. That was really fun to work with geometry wise, but that's what I want to share for now.
That's good.
That's
It's
all I
good
got.
stuff.
Oh, let me put it back to you. Well, the NASDAQ settled above the square.
It did. But I want to show you
We got
something
more to
because,
go. Is that the deal here?
well, if we make a higher high, yes, we can say that. But right now we're still making a lower high. And the interesting thing to watch, look at what we did in July. Same thing, Barry, right? We were coming up to the square, we got above it, we settled on top of it,
And then
made a
broke.
lower high, and then boom.
Right, right.
So are we repeating that pattern again? I don't know. I mean,
Well,
we'll
we
have
got
to
to watch
see.
that low, that's for sure.
Yeah, we have to watch this low because that's on full square support, and then we have to watch this. Do we roll over here, or can we push up and make another high?
Right, right.
And again, I'm just pointing towards this here as a recent phenomena that we have to look at. And
Mhm.
this is what happens when you put in that lower high, right?
Mm.
you start the downtrend. Let's also look at, but this is interesting too, because like you were showing with ES,
Mhm.
you were on what, a 4x1 there. This
Yeah,
is this is 2x1,
yeah.
pretty much 2x1.
I mean,
So
they're
it's
all kind of blow-off formations. It's what
they're
they are.
steep. Yes, they're
Yeah.
steep.
Hmm.
Um, Interestingly enough, the half square here is January 2, and yours was December 29 for ES. So
Wow. Yeah.
couple days. And you
Hmm.
take the holiday January 1 and the weekend, it's like one day off.
Right. Right.
When is December 29th? It's Friday, next Friday.
Hmm.
So, and the second is Tuesday, and Monday's not trading. So it's all pretty similar there. Let's take a quick look at the weekly here.
Hmm.
So weekly is battling at the full square. See, last week we closed, just under it there. This week we're pushing through. We'll probably close above it. The question is, are we going to settle on top next week, or are we going to come back through?
Man, if that's not the recipe for a beautiful false break.
And this is weekly, right? This is
Yeah. Yeah.
weekly. So it's bigger picture. So we'll see. It's a lot of the stuff, the timing's there. We're at important price levels, and we're at a really important decision point, it seems, in many markets. Anything else you want to add here, either on the daily or the
Well, just to
weekly?
say, 17,440 is sort of, I have a square coming up in that level, which
That's
is,
up in here.
so it got a little bit of room.
Hmm. There is some room there. And there's your daily. 17,440 might be right up here. Yeah, that's 17,400.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's the half square.
Hmm. So
So
we'll
it's right
watch,
up there.
for it. And we have
Well,
few more days left. A lot can happen in one day, as we
yeah,
saw
that's
on
true.
Wednesday. So,
That is very true. Um, let's switch over to Bitcoin. Here last week we were in here and thinking, oh, maybe this thing is rolling over. And now here we are
mhm.
again trying to figure out, are we going to make a higher high? Are we going to make a lower high and roll over? But
Or-
we're
yeah.
back above the half square, which is good. It's bullish.
Yeah. It seems like it's kind of hooked up with the dollar at this moment. So
Yeah.
inversely
Yeah.
anyway. But
You-
go ahead.
I was going to say, and again, timing wise, is coming up on a half square here, Christmas Eve. So Sunday,
Well,
got
just
the
to put
half
it
square
out
time.
there, go ahead. Were you finished?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say, I think we talked about it last couple times. From the low on November 22nd
Mm-hmm.
of last year,
Mm-hmm. Over here.
hmm we scored out at that high on my charts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this high is a lower high, and this really should be it. And I'm just going to call it out.
Mm-hmm.
That's just,
Yeah. It could.
you
It
know,
certainly could.
and so I guess the market would be taking out your 50% would be a great indicator that the high is in place,
Agreed.
which is not too far.
No. No. It's right there.
But it did square out. I mean, we got to talk about that. So yeah.
Yeah. In the rest of commodity land, I was telling Barry, yes, this is a Christmas show and we're all slowing down. There's just not a lot to do. The ones that he talked about are the ones that are most interesting, which is crude, nat gas, gold,
Mhm.
copper. The sugar short's working out really well. It
Right.
continues to pay there. Cocoa's just keeps like kind of grinding up near the highs. Coffee's
Mhm.
the other one that's acting well. If you're not involved there, that seems to be developing and creating a very bullish pattern. The grains are setting up. Wheat's the best of the grains right now, but they're all, pulling back and sort of creating a little consolidation here before the next move. What I'm interested in basically ending the year on, Barry, is just sort of talking about, what are you looking for next year? Like, what are the big themes that are sort of coming at you through your work? Because I know you do it sort of, you let the charts speak to you and then you say, okay, this is the theme that the charts are telling me, as opposed to saying I have a theme and then go looking for it in a chart.
Mhm.
So what are the charts saying to you for next year as we turn the calendar here?
I'd be really prepared next week when we do the end of the year show
Mhm.
for,
Right?
for that to get into some detail. But I think generally, it's really I'm looking for, overall would be I'm looking for inflation to come back
Hmm.
at some point. And
Hmm.
so I'm looking at these commodities to start winding up and finish putting in the lows. All this meddling around we did near the lows, ones that were putting in lows. And the other ones like cocoa, that really went, you know, is gone crazy looking for those kinds of things to pull back and make that final pullback before we take off. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of seeing longer term, there's much more room for commodities to move, and I'm looking for that pivot to start next year. I think that would be the biggest theme, if you ask me.
Hmm.
And if you remember, like 22, we were really, really bullish on the commodities, right? And
Yeah.
and what happened was this year we had the correction from that initial move. And so it's really kind of like, oh, where do we finish the correction? And when do we start the next leg? So I think that's going to frame in somewhere next year.
I
Um,
I agree with that. I think a lot of these commodities, we've been essentially correcting since shortly after the Russian invasion. Like most of them have been correcting since, highs made in early or mid 21. And so we're getting to that, year and a half type of correction that we do see in these things within bull markets.
mhm.
And next year, I think is your call.
Same thing with the dollar. I'm looking for it to sort of find its lows and start winding up again, and bonds finding its corrective high and then sort of moving lower. S&P is the only thing I'm really not sure exactly how the whole year would pan out yet because I haven't really done all of it. But in the meantime, I think we also have more upside after this, whatever next correction is. So let's see how that all works out. So the S&P is the only thing whatever correction that we get here, we'll have to take it from there, be it the low in January or March or however we, leg into that. But I think somewhere within the year, all of these things going to pivot towards more inflation and we're going to have a lot of good trading. Kind of
Yeah.
like our dreams in 22,
Yeah, and I
we're
think
back to
like
that phase again, the
yeah,
next startup. So yeah.
right. And I think your view on commodities because of that is sort of fits with what I'm looking at as well, which is, a lot of these commodities have been correcting since shortly after the Russian invasion, whether it was, early 21 for some of them or mid 21, late 21. They've been correcting 18 months, 2 years now. And
Mm-hmm.
we're in when you look at those long-term commodity charts, a lot of times they make these runs and then they pull back and correct, and then a bigger run comes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of them are setting up for that. And we'll be on that all next year because that's uh as you've seen this year with the runs we've seen in sugar and cocoa when they get going, these things go and they go for months.
Mm-hmm. Or
So
years,
or
depending.
even years. Yeah. And so, we're gonna be all over that. And I think, as you said, we'll do it. You want to do a year end, year ahead type show next week?
Sure, we can look at the long-term charts and kind of, isolate it there.
Yeah, maybe we can
Stay
just
with
focus
those.
on some monthlies and talk
Yeah,
about
yeah,
the
let's do that.
setups in different monthlies next week when things are slower.
That'll be fun. Yeah, let's do that.
But everybody, listen, we appreciate your following us. We appreciate the likes and the support and the ringing the bell and subscribing to the channel. We really enjoy doing these, especially when we get the feedback that people, find them useful and helpful. So we appreciate you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to everybody. Barry, Merry Christmas to you and the family. We'll talk next week after Christmas and before New Year's with like you said, some sort of look ahead show. We'll look at the bigger picture.
All right, that sounds good. Merry Christmas, Ben, and thanks
Thanks,
for
Barry.
everything. Thanks for all the work. Thanks for all the stuff you share. My goodness, there's a lot of good stuff there. And yeah, everybody have a Merry Christmas. We'll see you. Happy holidays.
Take care, everybody.
Bye. Ciao.
Bye.